Which do you love more, being a chiropractor or being a parent? Hi there, I'm Greg Venning and welcome to the Questing Chiropractor, the podcast that helps you make sense of your chiropractic world. And that question is an unfair one, and today we're going to delve into that kind of unfair question and others like it that really face parents and specifically mothers who are also in practice. And we're going to talk to Karen Kalefsky today, and she shares with a very raw and honest take on what it's like to be a mum and a chiropractor. We talk about values, we talk about resilience, we talk about community, we talk about adaptability, we talk about love. And in the true nature of the topic of what we're talking about, we have a very raw, unedited episode where we have some interruption with Karen's family life coming into the recording of the podcast. And we flow with it just like Karen talks about flowing with it in practice and with life as well. There's one small language warning in here, nothing major, but this is an episode to be shared far and wide, especially with mums and parents in chiropractic. So please enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor Podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vital, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story. So welcome back to the Questing Chiropractor. And today we have Karen Kalefsky with us. And Karen is amazing. She's been on the podcast before. If you haven't listened, please go back and listen to the episodes on politics that Karen's done with us. But we're going to take a slightly different stance today. I want to kick off from the very beginning. We recently did one of our Quest intensives, and you shared a story that was really powerful, resonated with quite a few people. And I wanted to kick off. Can you share that story with us as a starting point for today?
Okay. Well, over the last 7 years, I have owned my own practice, and I never wanted to be a practice owner. I loved being an associate. It was great. But once I realized that my values weren't fitting in with, and my purpose weren't fitting in with where I was working, I just took the leap. And of course, the wonderful Mark Wassels encouraged me to leap even further and buy a building to move my practice into eventually. And taking on that building was out of my comfort zone. And there were lots of stumbling blocks along the way where I had to figure out how to get the finance. Then I had to figure out how to do the change of use and get everything signed off so that we could move it from a residential to a commercial building. And I had a lot of stumbling blocks along the way where people were like, well, you can't do it that way and it's going to cost you this much. And I just went, okay, well, I'm not doing that. So let me find someone else who can give me the right answer, which is the one that I need to hear. That means that I can get this finished. And in the end, the concreting was the last thing to do. And I'd been quoted something like $16,000 or $17,000 for the job. And the guy that quoted it disappeared off the face of the earth. And everybody else was coming in at closer to $37,000, $38,000. So we had a significant shortfall in funds to get this thing done. So what I did was I took it upon myself to just engage the services of the people who could start the soonest, which was the next day. And once they were way through the job, I went, hey, listen, I don't have all the money right now. Is it okay if I pay you off? They had the decision to make of either walking away and getting nothing, or they could just finish the job and then they could get paid eventually, and which is what they did. So what the point of the story was that things don't go smoothly. There's always little bends and twists in the road, and it's just about how you roll with it and just being adaptable.
Adaptability is such a superpower as practice owners, and it's what we try and give to our practice members, isn't it? As we're adjusting spine and nervous system, we're looking to improve their physiological, psychological adaptability. And so making sure that we're working it on ourselves is pretty important, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Exactly. And it is a beautiful little reminder that, yes, that is what we're all about, creating adaptability, because we can't always control everything in our environment, but we can control to a certain point how we respond to those things.
Yes. And so in your story, you talk about the control there. So there's the control, there's the level of control you have of being an associate. Then you go on to owning your own practice. Your level of control goes up. And so you have to learn to be able to adapt to ever more a level of challenge. And then you go
Yes.
on to buying the practice, then zoning it, then building. So your level of control and your ability to adapt was being pushed the whole time. But kind of like exercise, your adaptability, your ability to adapt doesn't grow unless you push it.
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
Because there
Okay,
are many
cool.
moments we back down because of the pressure and go, this isn't going to work. But, you know, that wasn't an option for me. It was like, right, what's next? Find a way around this. Let's do it. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So that then gives us the idea that that success is often messy, and the dots don't join up until you look backwards. So when we're moving forwards, expect things to be messy, expect to make a plan, sometimes when we look at people who are successful, or people look up to us when we have some level of success, and they might see this golden glow behind what we've done. The real story is the dots only join up when you look backwards. Going forward, we didn't know how the dots were going to join up. We just knew we needed to go in that
Exactly.
direction. Yeah.
And I think, Greg, one of the important things to keep in mind is that I had a really good support team around me. So it was like, your mastermind group. It was the like partly Quest and other chiropractors that I know and other business owners that I know. And there were moments when, just a little simple conversation with someone made it that little bit easier to just keep going. So it is really, really important to not try and do things on your own without having a great network of people that are there to sometimes hold your hand and sometimes give you a kick up the butt and say, no, let's get going. Come on, you can do this.
Yeah. Beautiful. Like almost no success is done on its own. There's always people around. And within Quest, we like to talk about this conversation of not just success, this left brain metric of numbers and achievements. It's also the right brain part of fulfillment. And that's often so much
Mhm.
accomplished, so much and delivered so much in community. Is that success and that fulfillment together delivered in community so important? Um, so now let's take this into the realm of family. So you're a mum, you own a practice, have been on a couple of national boards for technique and for association. How do these concepts of adaptability, messy success, being in community, how do these relate into your experience of moving between these different roles in life?
Yeah. Uh, I think it's important for any non parents out there to understand that once you become a parent, everything you think you know about being a parent and what you would like to do to raise your children and how practice life and professional life is going to work, well, that's all going to get turned on its head, right? This little creature comes into your world and you like, I have never loved anyone this much. So as a mum, that I was yeah, I was due to have my first child around the end of November. He's just turned 17, 9 days ago. And when I was pregnant with him, I was like, I can do this. I'll work up to 40 weeks. It's no problem. And then I will have a few weeks off and then I'll get back into work in the new year. Now I did that. I actually worked to 39 weeks because my body was just a bit too like, yeah, I had to actually allow myself some space to look after myself and my child. I gave myself a week and he was born at 41 weeks. And then I had 5.5 weeks off before I went back into work, right? So I had this pressure because there was a financial pressure for me to get back into practice. And I just thought, yeah, I'll be right. Grandparents will look after him. It's fine. And it broke my heart going back to work. It just broke my heart. Getting a bit emotional about this because it's quite real. So, but I did it and I worked 3 full days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, split shifts, time off in the middle where I would pump milk and I would spend some time with him and, feed him. And then, so he was 5.5 weeks old when I did that. And then I had my second one and I went, there is no way in hell I am working full days and leaving my baby. So he was about 10 and a half, 11 weeks old when I went back to work, and I did 4 half days and it was much easier. And I still work 4 half days. I have gone back to work more and then I've come back to this 4 half days. So it was a big, big learning curve. And what I think for all of the people that are non-parents out there is don't just give yourself a little bit of ease around it. If you want to go back to work really quickly, that's okay. But do it in a way that isn't going to just kind of make it so hard for you to be a parent. But I loved being in practice, so it wasn't necessarily hard being there because I still love being in practice. But what it was it was just a bit too much pressure. So talk to people around you about how they've done it, and then think about what fits in with you and your values. Do you have a good network of support and people around you? Because I did it in a way that I thought, oh, well, this is how I'll keep the practice running well. But it wasn't running well because I wasn't running well, if that makes sense. Yeah. But we love being chiropractors. And even when you become a mother, you still love it. It's just about setting it up in a way that's a little bit more successful. And I wouldn't change my journey because I think it was pretty cool to do it the way that I did and learn what I learned and understand a lot more about, uh, what was a good way to do it, what wasn't a good way to do it, and to be able to share those stories with people too. So now, now I have teenagers, right? Greg, how old are your girls?
9 and 6.
Okay, so in another 4 years or so, they will need you more. Right? And what I love about what I've created now, my daughter was about 3 when I started my own practice, and I worked really hard for about a year, working in 2 practices, and I was not really home evenings, and I worked a Saturday morning, but I built this, and now I can move away a little bit and have, associates in, and I can just do my 4 half days, and I don't have to, uh, I don't have to have that same level of stress. But what I'm finding is my children need me more now in bigger ways because anyone can give them the love when they're little and they just need to be fed and have their bottoms cleaned and someone to nurture them and put them to sleep and things like that. But now there's some real big stuff. And, you know, you can't take your eye off the ball now. They throw some big curveballs at you.
So, so does it come back to this kind of level of this increasing threshold of control and adaptability as the themes, especially of young children growing up in the world now, the stakes keep getting higher with the advice you give, the decisions they make, the decisions that they make, the people they hang out with, compared to my 6 and 9-year-old. You get to teenage years and you're really getting to decisions that set them on different life paths. And so it's that same threshold of control that just keeps growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the decisions that my 17-year-old makes now, don't get me wrong, there's no decision that you make now that is good or bad and is always good or bad, right? There's always ways to work around things. But I see a lot of pressure in his world, and sometimes he just needs me there to cook him a meal, to have a conversation at that very point in time when he's ready to talk, or to drop him off at the gym because it saves him a bus ride, But little things like that take the pressure off. He's already overloaded teenage brain, those are the things that I like to be around for.
Beautiful. And so let's take a
Yeah.
step back from where you are now with teenage kids and come back to some of the early years of parenting. And from what I hear from a lot of mums and parents in general, but mums especially, is a sense of judgment from other people and a sense of comparison. Did you experience that much at all in your early years and through the years?
Well, I think if we go back to me working those 3 full days, right? We were in Glasgow at that time, Greg, and I was surrounded by all these successful chiropractors, and I was, checking about 200 people a week, and I felt this real need to keep up that level. I was like, I can do this. I'm not going to drop down and, not be up there with these people that are high achievers, because I'm a high achiever too, right? And there was a lot of judgment from me on myself. And I think there were a lot of people around me that were trying to say to me, hey, you should just be a little bit more gentle with yourself. It's actually okay. You can take some time for you. You should probably keep a little bit for yourself. But I had this thing in my head that things had to be a certain way. And I've heard it from other chiropractors, other women. You've got people, well, let's say within your practice, and they're like, "Oh, are you only taking that much time off?" And then you go back into practice in the time that you're ready for, and then they're like, "Oh, but you're not working these days. Well, but you're not really that available, are you? So you're being judged for only taking a short amount of time off, but also not working enough hours to suit them, So like the key is none of that really matters. And a lot of these comments, I hear that people say to me, oh, but you don't work Wednesdays and I'm off on Wednesdays. That suits me. And I'm like, I know it suits me too to be off on Wednesdays. So it's about playing with it. And then they're like, oh yeah, fair enough. Just because I'm a mum doesn't mean you're not a mum too, that likes to have a Wednesday off in the middle of the week. Not that I'm off, I'm doing other things like recording this podcast with you, Greg.
Exactly. Yep.
So, yeah. So it's about not taking on board things that sometimes you perceive that as a judgment, and it's not really, and it may be a little bit from a person, but it's more about how you're judging yourself. So just flick your mindset around that and just tell yourself, I'm doing a great job. I am being a great mom. I am being a great chiropractor. I'm being a great practice owner or associate, and I am great. And I am giving to each part of my world enough. All I have to give, and it is enough.
And that's really a values conversation, especially when it comes to judgment. And I've heard it put nicely enough and talked to mums in the practice that, I don't know, the whole way through parenting, I don't know if it ever actually settles, but especially when the first child comes, it's like you've got salad dressing in a bottle that you're just shaken up and it hasn't settled yet. And the only thing you can do is give it time to settle, because these new values, these new priorities, this new love, like you said earlier in your life, is going to shake things up. And I think there's the expectation, like you said, like I am a high performer, which is what your salad dressing looked like before. That's your values. Then it gets shaken up, and your values afterwards are going to be different, and that's okay. And give it time to settle. And then the judgments that are coming in, partly from yourself, because it's this old set of values judging against a new undetermined set of values, which is really hard because you're judging yourself against a value system you haven't settled into yet. Never mind other people chirping from the sides with their value systems that are probably completely contradictory internally anyway. So what they say doesn't matter. And just letting these new values settle and finding out what this new balance is like for you and being gentle with yourself. That sounds really important, but it is very much when there's judgment coming in for listeners, both the men and the women, the parents and the non-parents, is whenever there's judgment coming in, realize that that's people having a values conversation with you based on their values. And if you are sure on yours, then that doesn't matter. And if you're unsure on yours, then it might be worth nodding and smiling and listening, but realizing this is an inside-out game, developing your own value system. And if you're in a state of confusion, or if you're in a state of you feel that their comment has hurt you, then just take that as an indication that you're not so strong on your own value system. And maybe it's time to be curious and just let that percolate through.
Yes. And that was a big one, I think, for me, Greg. And I probably had a really high value around being the best in terms of being the best, well, probably everything, chiropractor. And then I wanted to be the best mum. But that family has risen up in a way that I don't think I could understand at that time. And I talk to a lot of teenage girls that come into my practice, and I listen to the way they talk about what they want to do and careers. And I remind them gently and lovingly that there will come a point in time that they will likely want to have a family, start a family of their own. So keep that in mind when you're looking at a career that maybe needs you to work 12-hour days, 9 days a week kind of thing. It's like bring it into a space where you look at something that will actually allow you to love your life and be able to raise your children, because it's awesome to be a parent. As you know, these you don't want to miss these moments because they're fantastic. So and again, no judgment around sending children to daycare 5 days a week, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But that's got to be hard for parents and children to live that life. So if we can create something where you can be there, and I think chiropractic is the best profession for that. And I tell all the girls, I'm like, come on, chiropractor. It's the best. It's like you're never really at work. And I used to just bring my babies into the practice and you just pass them around to the practice members to have a cuddle. And, the CA is always there. It's fantastic. It's a great way to do it. That was how we ran the practices that I've been involved in. I'm not saying that's everyone's cup of tea, but that's how we go. We have babies come in and everybody passes them around for a cuddle. They're just not my babies anymore. So
Yeah, the theme stayed the same. It's just the child has changed.
well, that's exactly right. And they keep changing, which is cool. We get more and more babies come through as the other ones grow out of that. So
And I think it's one of the distinctions we draw in Quest for our questers and for our listeners listening is in the corporatized world that we tend to live in as professionals, there's this idea of this work-life balance. And these two things are seen as very separate. There's your work and there's your life, and you have to get them balanced. And the answer is there's never any balance. Language warning, balance is bullshit. So the thing we get to play with as chiropractors, and certainly within Quest, what we espouse, and each of us as these Quest coaches do this to a reasonable degree, is actually what we have practice life. We don't have work-life balance. We have practice life, and there's a constant balance and juxtaposition with those two. So now, in your role as a coach, or what we call pilots within Quest, what have you observed when you've been coaching specifically women who are mums or have gone through the journey from pre-parent to being parent? What are some of the things you've seen that are the common stumbling blocks for? And what have you seen as some of the, I'm not going to say there's a one size fits all, but some of the best approaches to think about how they shift into a new balance in their life or rebalance their life the way they want to?
yeah, look, I think that one of the saddest things I've seen is women who feel like they can't go back into practice, or they don't sort of prioritize that professional side. And so they will do some sort of a part-timey thing and they're not really fully in it. And again, I don't have any judgment around that. It may be what works, but I actually think it's a confidence thing a lot of the time. It's like, I'm not confident to go back into this and do this well. And so you find that they're not actually being the best. Oh, how do I word this? This is not the best chiropractor. They're still great when they're there, but they almost feel like they can't. Oh no, I can't do this. I can't give it enough. And I find that really sad because I've seen some amazing chiropractors who will, just do some sort of a non-committed part-time. I sort of do this on the side type thing because I'm a mum now. Sorry, there's my daughter just coming in from school.
That's okay. We can edit. We can edit quite
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
Hello, Sky.
Come and say hi to Greg. Sorry. So yeah, and so I think it's that loss of direction and almost like we step out of it for so long that the confidence to get back into it. Whereas I did the opposite. I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough time off, so I ended up moving straight back into it. But I probably burnt myself out a little bit as a mum. So there's those different sides of it. So back finding that word, that balance, but it's what works right for me. But what I found was the easiest thing for me was that I had a good network of support around me. So whether it's family, friends, and that's where I feel like I set things up for success because I always had grandparents really close by. So if you can have grandparents close by, they're actually, I don't know if they're even the next best thing. They might even be better sometimes than we are as parents because they've got a little bit more patience. So if you haven't got grandparents, find some surrogate grandparents to come in and step in and be involved with your kids because there are some great people around that would that can help out, and it means that you can feel confident to go back into practice and not feel like your kids are neglected or that you're not doing enough.
Yeah. And so as we've been going through it, there's been 4 essential themes that I think have developed through this conversation. And if number 1 is values and being as clear as we can on our values and knowing that those values will be unclear as we grow into the parenting role, and that's okay. Let that evolve, let that develop. Then number 2 you spoke about there was, we spoke about this idea of threshold of control, and that's also about how we structure our lives. And that allows us to then structure our flow. And so when you have kids, the structure, your default diary, your organization, your strategies, your systems, they're going to need to change completely. And they change during different ages of development of your children as well.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yes.
Yeah. And then you spoke about community. And so like it takes a tribe to raise a child, right? So when you're bringing in this community aspect to the structure you have within the values you have, then you're feeling held.
Yes.
And I know, so as a dad, I would say that's an important thing for a mum, probably even more important that she feels held by a sense of community, that there is some kind of safety net, and that somebody's got your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Give me 2 seconds. Guy, we're recording, darling, and you're banging about. This is why I didn't know we're recording. Stop banging about. Sorry. She actually finished school and I thought we might be done in time for me to get her. So she's walked home. It's not far, but she's coming and she's doing an angry stomp. Greg said, thank you. Yeah.
You know what I might do is I might minimize the editing on that because this is the essence of bringing your baby to work. Yeah, you can make it work and it's going to be imperfect, but you're going to get the, so I might actually see how much of this I can actually keep in just as a very real demonstration of like, it can be done this way. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing actually is, like parents come into my practice with their kids and I make it very clear when there's mums or dads and they're like, or grandparents actually, and they're like, oh, well, I've got a 2-year-old or I've got a 5-year-old that I'm looking after. I'm like, great, bring them along, right? Bring them along. I was building train tracks with a 3-year-old yesterday because he came into the practice with his nana, and I had a few minutes after I had checked her, and I thought, oh, excellent. Let's build he found the train tracks and I was like, let's build these together. And it was fantastic. I needed that on that day. So But she was like, this is great because I know I can come in here to this practice and I can I don't get judged because my grandson gets a little bit rowdy at times, and that it's a safe space, and that is the community that I have created in my practice, and I love working with that because I understand what it's like when you've got small children and you have to try and schedule appointments around somebody being available to look after them because you're not allowed to bring them somewhere, and that makes it really hard for people. So having that understanding that sometimes uh, allowing your practice to have this beautiful chaos. I love chaos. With train tracks around and children at your feet and sometimes dogs at your feet and whatever. It does actually make people feel nurtured in their space where they are on their journey. And that actually helps when you have that environment, which I had with Megan Hudson Evans when we worked in a practice together. We used to have babies and kids all around us. And then we had our babies quite close together. And we brought them into the practice and they just fit in with all these other babies that were and kids that were around us. And it was really one of my favorite times in practice because we all understood where we were at, and it did invite a lot of mums in and parents, grandparents too, who thought this is a cool place for us to be, and this is a part of our journey of health and support and love. So it was awesome.
And that's just such an attractive set of values to be able to display and then to create the structure around, to be able to invite that community in. And that brings us to that fourth piece that's emerged from today is adaptability. And adaptability is the result of the first three pieces coming together and being integrated. And that allows us to then raise our game. And that game can be the performance game, and it can be the family fulfillment game, and it can be both and a drift between each of them. And I know you've had powerful journeys into the world of politics within chiropractic. And I know we're short on time. I just wanted to nudge on the fact that you've done this in practice, you've done it in family, and you've done it within politics. And from the outside, for me, it seems like there is this massive amount of adaptability. And I'm sure you have limits. I haven't really seen them from the outside, but you've kept raising the game as you've gone through. But it's because of these 4 points coming through that's allowed you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding my values has allowed me to move into spaces and know when I'm having to, um, you know, uh, honor my values and sometimes say to them, hey, I just got to move you down in the order a little bit so I can do this other thing over here, you know? And then having my family and my community around me has allowed me to be able to get on a plane and go to a meeting and know that everything will still function. Maybe not at the level that I would do it at. When people go, well, that's ridiculous. How can you do all that? And I say, I do all of that. So, but that's okay. It functions well. And also when I look at my children, they really step up. And from a parent's point of view, when you know that you've set up certain levels of operation or standards, or you've been a certain type of role model for them, they know what's achievable, and it's they don't have to achieve all those things. I let them be their own person. I even had a conversation with my son the other day. He said, "But you did this and this and this when you were my age," and I'm like, "You don't have to be me. You be you." You know? So, and that's the whole point for all of the mums out there, for all the dads, for all the parents, grandparents in whatever way, shape, or form. This is your journey, and make sure you understand that the way you structure your practice, the way you move back into practice when things have changed in your world in terms of babies and or puppies or whatever it is, make it your way and make it work for you. And don't be your own, judge. Don't sit over yourself and go, um, you know, you're doing it the wrong way. Look at how it works for you and make it your story and your journey and your community. And the thing that is um, making you keep a love for practice life rather than dreading going back into practice or dreading whatever part of your life. You should be loving it all and find a way to make sure that you keep it. Um, I'm going to use that word balanced or chaotic or in a way that you love, right?
I think that's a great place for us to round off there, Karen. So do it from love is just such a great way to really encapsulate that. I think for listeners out there, if this has touched a chord for you at all, please consider sharing this with colleagues and friends. I think there's lots of people in the chiropractic world who need to hear this message, who would love to hear this message. And Karen, I want to say thank you so much for jumping on. You've had family going around in the background. You've been living and actually displaying the values that we've been talking about while we've done this recording. And so thank you very, very much.
Thanks for your time, Greg. I do appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for taking the time to listen.
Bye, everybody.